Hello, everyone. So the topic of this part of the module is cells. So we're going to be talking about some real cell basics, some ideas of what cells are, and hopefully you can get an idea of how cells are going to relate to the rest of the course, because we are going to be talking about cells a lot. So just a reminder here, in this class, we do not have a cumulative final, comprehensive final, meaning each part of the course kind of stands alone, except there are concepts that we will talk about in the first week or throughout the course that are going to be carried forward throughout the whole class. So this understanding of what cells are is not just going to be on one exam material. It's going to be something you need to know throughout the course. And that's going to be true for genes and how genes work and some other things. So even though it's not technically cumulative final exam for this course, there's no comprehensive final, but things build as we go. It's an important thing to remember that you're going to have to know the knowledge from the previous module to understand the next module. So what is a cell? Cells are basically, we're talking about the basic unit of life. So we're going to see that in upcoming slide, we're going to talk about it, how cells work and what different types of cells are there and what their structures and functions are. So first of all, the definition of a cell, it's the smallest unit of life. So you might see it written as a basic unit of life. So what does that mean? It means that anything that can be considered alive can be done by a cell. In fact, there are some living organisms like bacteria and yeast. So I wrote that here. So the smallest cells are smallest unit of life. So some organisms like bacteria and yeast, where organism is a cell, they are called single-celled organisms, meaning they don't have different organs, all the other things, like different parts, but they're just single cells. But this is a human biology class, so we'll look at the cell in the context of human biology, or at least mammalian biology. So this one here up here is looking at an antelope, but this is so biological speaking, they aren't that different from humans. You maybe disagree on that, but if you look at the big picture of biology compared to bacteria and mushrooms and trees and things, that are quite different from humans, antelopes and humans are pretty similar. So we can see that here, cell as the smallest unit of life, that's the definition. And when similar kind of cells work together to perform a particular function in our bodies, then we can call that a tissue. So that can be referred as a tissue. So like nervous tissue, your muscle tissue, is made up of a bunch of muscle cells. Liver tissue is made up of liver cells. And so there are different tissues in the body. Then different tissues can come together and they can make an organ. So they can create a structure in the body that we'll call an organ. They are, so we're looking at here, this is an example of the brain. That's an organ. You could also refer to the heart, lungs, or as an organ, liver or muscles. So the organs, those can be usually seen with the naked eye at some level and identified as discrete thing. For example, stomach, we can identify that. And then we have organ system, in which we have multiple organs working together to work on a specific body function. So here they're talking about the nervous system, which is going to include the brain, but also the spinal cord and all of the nerves that are going out and coming in to help the body communicate. So we can talk about the digestive system. That's going to be mouth, esophagus, and the stomach, intestines, and some other organs like liver and gallbladder that can be considered part of that. So muscular system, so looking at all the muscles in the body, skeletal system, the bones and the joints, ligaments. So there are different organ systems. We can put those different organ systems together. There are about 12 or 11 or 12 identified organ systems in the human body that work together to create the complete organism. And then here is an antelope, or we can talk about a human being an organism. If you put all those digestive system, muscular system, skeletal system, nervous system, cardiovascular system together, that's going to create an organism. So that's the kind of scale we're talking about, human humans today's conversation. So this was the cell here. Now we're gonna go the other way because we talked a little bit about the parts of the cell called organelles. So that's a structure within a cell that performs a specific function. So things like nucleus, chloroplast, mitochondria, Golgi apparatus. So some things, you're gonna learn those names during this class. So each one of these is not capable of living, but a lot of times the cell can't live without the parts. So these are integral to the cell function. So, but a mitochondria by itself is not alive. The nucleus by itself is not alive. But if you put them all together, you can create a cell, which is alive. And then you can go to a next level, moleculous combination of atoms. And then atom is smallest particle of an element. So you can, go even smaller. And then we have particles making up the atom, which is already the smallest particle of an element. Then we have the cell theory. So there's something called cell theory, and I want to point the word out, theory. So I want to let you know, in case you don't know this, when somebody in a science class uses the word theory, that means that's very, very strongly supported idea or belief. So that's basically taken almost as a fact. So theory is something very powerfully supported, and cell theory says that all living things are made up of cells. So I put that in capital because we never discovered an exception. So now what happens when we start going artificial intelligence from computers and robots and things like that seem like, they're going to start becoming so those things, they are not alive, but they can do a lot basically. So we'll have some discussions about that. But currently on planet, all living things that we have ever seen or discovered are made up of cells. And then all cells are made from other cells, meaning that we do not currently at this time have cells just spontaneously popping out of nothing and becoming a cell. Now, you might say, then where did the first cell come from? So that's a conversation that science has tried to address, and a lot of other philosophies have tried to address, but we don't have a clear answer to that. We have science, it's the best guess. That's basically maybe self-replicating molecules or things that eventually were able to evolve into a cell at some point. That's how the first cell came about, and maybe it was made from a non-cell, but since then, all cells are made from other cells. In humans, we can look at a lot of different ways. We have things like muscle cells, skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. So you have like kidney cells, lung cells, thyroid cells, pancreatic cells. They're all going to look different. But something that's very interesting about this is even though all these different cell types we see, they look different, but they have the same genetic material. Means in your body, you have skeletal muscle, and your kidney cells and your thyroid cells, they have all same genetic materials on the inside. One exception to that over here is the red blood cells, which actually lost its genetic material. But before it lost it had the same genetic material as everything else. This is an example of what human cheek cells look like. These are really easy to find. I also teach intro bio class. So in that class, we actually take a toothpick and you take that and you scrape inside of your cheek. And then you can put that on a microscopic slide. And then on the slide, you can put some blue stain, methylene blue stain, and then you can see it under the microscope. If you didn't put the blue dye, then it will look transparent, might be hard to see. But this dark blue spot here is the nucleus. And the rest of it, which we don't see much, there's a lot of other stuff in there, which we're going to talk about today. So you can see the tiny blue spots here. Those are actually here. These are bacteria. Here are some more cells. These are blood cells, and these are including some of the so red blood cells, we said they didn't have their own DNA. And some other kind of cells that look like neutrophils, those are type of white blood cells that they do have DNA inside of them. So the staining they do the stain, and that's how they can identify them. So what do cells do? So cells do everything that living organism needs to be able to do. So cells in your body, they're going to be capable of all kinds of things. And I'll list some, some things that we can notice. If we were meeting in person, maybe you could come up with a list. So if you want, you can pause the video here and you can come up with some things that you think some cells do. So I'm gonna make a list here and I'll just write them out. Okay, so cells are gonna be able to reproduce. Cells are going to be able to make energy from food, or maybe just make energy for the cell to use. You can do that from food, or some cells that can make energy, they can make it from light. So that's why I didn't want to write food, or from other sources. Cells can interact with the environment, and they can respond to stimuli, meaning that if there is some kind of external stimulus, more food available, for example, they can respond to that and they can take up the food that's available, depending on the cell. And if there's something negative out there like poison, and maybe that environment is toxic, they can respond by getting rid of the poison or detoxifying or something like that. If you ever put some type of plant near the window, you're going to notice that it's kind of turning towards the sunlight. So that's kind of responding to the stimulus. They can also communicate with each other, communicate with other cells. So that's definitely something that human cells can do. In fact, most of the organisms can do that, even single cell organisms, even the very simple ones. They have the ability to communicate with other cells. So those are basically looking at different kinds of things. Living things can do that. So they can grow as part of reproduction process. But so other things some cells can do, not all of them, but some can do. So I'm going to put that in parentheses, is move. So that's the list. Maybe I missed a few things, but maybe you can think about those and write those down. But those are some of the things I could think about that the cells can do. And in coming up videos, we'll talk about different cell structures, and you'll see that how this relates to that and how the different structures help with those different parts and different functions. So I'm going to stop this video and then we'll pick up in the next video.